We've all heard of women's intuition, right? Well, men have intuition as well. Intuition is so important when it comes to feeding ourselves and our families in our challenging food environment. This podcast explores a variety of topics related to a powerful, evidence-based eating framework called intuitive eating that integrates instinct, emotion, and rational thought. My hope is that it will help you finally break free of the perpetual diet cycle. This is the Men's Intuition Podcast. All right, and welcome back to another episode of the Men's Intuition Podcast. As always, I'm your host, Jeff Ash, nutritionist, personal trainer, and intuitive eating coach. And as always, of course, I'm glad to be here with another episode. So, recently my wife and I just returned from a wonderful 6-day cruise to Costa Maya, Belize, and Cozumel. And if you've ever been on a cruise or an all-inclusive resort, maybe, you know it's essentially unlimited access to food and drink all day, all evening. It's just there. It's in front of you. It's constantly available. And it's just a big part of that experience. For example, breakfast was a breakfast buffet that went all morning. And then there was a short break, and then the lunch buffet started, and then the short break, and then the dinner buffet started. And, there are nicer dining restaurants on board that also were all inclusive with that. And you could order anything off the menu, and you could order multiple main dishes. You could order multiple desserts. You could go have them bring you out another plate if you wanted to, and all kinds of things like that. And on our ship, there was a pizza place that made some really good pizza, and it was open till 3 a.m. So it was open from about lunchtime until 3 a.m. So you had pizza available into the wee hours of the night. Guy Fieri's burgers and fries. That was another place, a big popular place, again, included in the cost. So there was no reason to say, I've spent a lot of money in the casino or something or whatever, and I shouldn't be spending any more money on burgers when there's other food available. No, it was all included. So no reason not to eat 20 burgers a day or 5 pizzas if you wanted, or whatever you want to do. There's a taco burrito place, pasta place, dessert buffet, all of these things. And this was all part of the experience there. Now, for some, this probably sounds like heaven. And for me, honestly, going in, I was really looking forward to it, because me and the way that I have embraced intuitive eating and incorporated that into my life, I feel very free around food. I don't feel like I'm controlled by it. And so for me, I was really excited about all these opportunities to just choose on a whim what I felt like eating. If I felt like burgers and fries, and my wife felt like pizza, then that was fine. She could grab a pizza and I could grab burger and fries, or she could grab the buffet and we can still eat together. We went on the cruise with several of our friends as well. And so the same thing, we could all go and get different things if we wanted and still enjoy that social time together. So for me, I was really looking forward to that. Well, for others, especially those who are currently dieting though, and I've been in this camp myself, so I can totally relate. It might sound absolutely horrifying, or it might just bring up some feelings of uneasiness or anxiousness. So it may not be completely horrifying, but it certainly makes you feel uncomfortable, right? No calorie counts available. There were no calorie counts that I saw anywhere, nothing on it, any of the menus or buffet items or anything like that. No macro counts. So you had no idea what the protein, fat, or carb content of all of the dishes was. No ingredient lists to know how much oil or even the kind of oil, how much sugar, whether it's organic, what kinds of preservatives or dyes were included in there, and all that kind of thing. It was basically, from a diet mindset, a diet perspective, it was basically a week of, quote, cheat days. And so before we move on though, I do want to, it's a little bit of a tangent here. I talked about knowing whether it's organic or the specific ingredients. If you're someone who really struggles with that idea, and you really struggle with how you think about the content of foods, to the point where you often find it difficult to eat at someone's home, or whether you find it difficult to eat in a restaurant unless you know exactly what those ingredients are, or in the example here, you would find it very difficult to eat at this buffet because of your fear of what kinds of ingredients may be in there. And I'm not talking about food allergies or those kinds of things. That's a whole different conversation. I'm talking about this clean eating mindset that a lot of us are maybe caught up in and hung up in. I'd highly encourage you to go back and listen to the episode prior to this one, episode number 14, where I talk with Jason Wood about his experience with orthorexia. And if you're not familiar with that term, then you definitely need to go back and listen I think you might find that episode really helpful in navigating this particular area. And so anyway, let's go ahead and move on before I get off on too much of a tangent there. Now, for some dieters, they may just take an effort mentality. And I also did this in the past too, where I would intentionally plan that, hey, I've got this week coming up where I know I can't count calories. I can't stick to my plan. So you know what? Screw it. I'm just going to go crazy. I'm going to eat all the stuff. I'm just going to eat whatever. I'm going to stuff myself. I'm going to eat tons of desserts and all this stuff. And I'll just undo the damage when I get back. Right. So I gain 2, 3, 4, 5, 10 pounds. Right. I'll just get it off a couple of weeks after I get back and no big deal, no harm, that kind of thing. So that's another mindset, though, that can become problematic because it's going into that vacation time with this very negative mindset that enjoying the trip, enjoying the vacation, enjoying the opportunities that are available to eat and try and experience all of these different foods, that's a bad thing that I'm going to have to undo later. As you can see, if you start to really think about that, that can really negatively impact our relationship with food. And it certainly isn't what I would consider a healthy way of looking at food going into it. And so again, that mindset can also be very problematic. And because what happens when we get back? Well, we often undo that damage by being even more restrictive or being more diligent sticking to our workout program, which often those kinds of behaviors are already problematic in our life because they're disrupting other areas of our life. And so if we become even more restrictive and meticulous in those areas, it can further exacerbate any issues that maybe we're struggling with prior to this vacation. So keep that in mind. You know, we also, one of the other things that I think a lot of people do too in these experiences is that we include gym workouts every day during that vacation. And that's in an effort to burn off all those extra calories. And don't get me wrong, there's nothing at all wrong with continuing to work out on vacation if that's something you really enjoy, if it makes you feel good, or if you're training for something and you just really can't take that time off because you have a specific program you're trying to follow and stick to, and nothing wrong with formal training, that kind of thing, if that is something you really enjoy. But what I'm talking about here is this you're working out because you're afraid that you might gain weight or as a compensatory behavior in response to eating more food. So you think, well, I ate all these treats, I ate all these delicious foods, and I've got to undo that damage now before it gets too late. That is that same kind of mentality of I'll undo the damage when I get home. This one, you're like, I'll undo the damage on a daily basis. And again, that can become a very negative way of relating to food. And it takes away from the enjoyment of the experience because now we're thinking, well, how much of that food did I eat and how much do I need to undo with this workout? And so it just takes away from that experience. So to keep this episode focused, let's just get into what it looks like when, instead of dieting, you are someone who has embraced intuitive eating. So since that describes me, someone who incorporates the principles of intuitive eating as well as coaching others in that area, I'm going to share some of my thoughts and my experiences and how 5 of these principles of intuitive eating specifically really helped me navigate and thoroughly enjoy my time without any worries whatsoever about the food on this cruise. So I hope that you'll find that helpful as well. All right, so let's dive into these 5 points that I wanted to make here. So principle number 3 of the intuitive eating framework is make peace with food. But we often summarize this with this phrase, unconditional permission to eat. And so if you've ever listened to the podcast before, or if you follow me on social media at intuitive.eating.men, then you've probably heard me talk about unconditional permission to eat. And if you haven't listened to any previous episodes, maybe go take a listen or go follow me over there on Instagram, and you'll get some more content like this on a regular basis. But in any case, unconditional permission to eat is exactly what it sounds like. Giving yourself unconditional permission to eat any food in any quantity at any time, regardless of what you did before, what you ate before, what physical activity you were engaged in before, or that you have planned for the rest of the day. So it's important that we understand that it truly is unconditional permission to eat. It kind of sounds like what we do when we are dieting and we give ourselves a cheat day, right? We say on the cheat day, I can eat whatever I want. And now you're thinking, okay, so now I'm supposed to give myself basically a cheat day 7 days a week? I'm like, yeah, exactly. Except you're not going into it thinking of it as a cheat day. You're going into it thinking positively about this, that I don't have to restrict myself. I can trust my body to tell me how much food I need. And if I'm listening to it and paying attention to the signals my body is giving me, I know that I can eat the amount that's going to be right for me, and I can eat the foods that are going to make me feel the best. And when I'm tuning into reflecting on how different foods have made me feel over the course of my life, then I'm going to choose foods based on that also. And I can trust myself that I give myself unconditional permission to eat whatever I want. I am going to make decisions that are going to serve my body well. That takes us into the second point, which is a key aspect of how this unconditional permission to eat, how we can use that to work for us. And that is by honoring our hunger. So this was the other thing that I did. So not only did I give myself unconditional permission to eat going into this cruise, which meant that when I saw all of this food, all of these options available, that I wasn't nervous about it. I was like, wow, this is awesome. I get to eat whatever sounds good in the moment. And that was a fantastic feeling. But because I also put a high importance on honoring my hunger, I know that I'm going to check in with myself and see, how hungry am I? What am I hungry for? Both physically and emotionally. And so when presented with all these unlimited options, I would make choices that served my body well. And so I ate salads and I ate meats, main dishes. I ate fried foods. I ate side dishes. I ate a variety of things at just about every meal. And it served me very well. And that takes us to the third point that I wanted to make, which was feeling your fullness. So this is another important principle of intuitive eating. So I'm giving myself this unconditional permission to eat anything I want at any time, in any quantity, as much ice cream as I wanted. That was included too. I honored my hunger. So I fed myself when I was hungry, but I also tuned into my fullness. So when I went to that buffet, filled up my plate with food and a salad and everything, and I'm eating and I'm sitting there enjoying it, enjoying my time with my wife and our friends, because we went with some friends as well. So I'm sitting there eating. When I got full, I checked in with myself and said, did I get enough? Is there anything that was on that buffet or that's available that still sounds good to me that I'm missing, that I would feel like I missed out on if I didn't eat? Nope, I'm good. So I would stop. And sometimes my plate was empty-ish. Other times it was half full. And that's okay, because I was listening to what my body was telling me as far as the signals it gives me related to hunger and fullness and satisfaction. Knowing too that I could go back later if I made a mistake, a quote mistake, and said, yeah, I'm full, I'm satisfied. And then 30 minutes later or an hour later, I thought, you know what? I really, like 5 more bites of that one dish would have been just really hit the spot. I can go back and get it. Because again, I'm giving myself that unconditional permission to eat at any time and any amount. There's no limit there. What that does is it's amazing how that can really help you to regulate your food intake in a way that makes you feel good. And I have to say, in all honesty, on that cruise, I can't think of a single time that I left thinking, oh my gosh, I ate way too much. I just do not feel good. And I have to say that every opportunity prior to starting to incorporate intuitive eating into my life, when I had a buffet available or something, I would usually get home and not feel good, because I felt somewhat out of control. I knew that I wasn't going to allow myself to eat that again until the next cheat day or until another time, or whatever dieting mindset I was in at the time. But knowing that I could go back at any time, I didn't feel that need. And so I just always felt full and satisfied and comfortable. That doesn't mean you don't make mistakes. I mean, last night, as an example, we had some friends over and I ate too much pizza. And later on, I just thought, I ate too much. I think I ate at least 1 or 2 pieces more than I should have, considering what else there was available there. And so we do make those eating quote mistakes, but our body makes up for it. My body made up for it today with my appetite. My appetite wasn't as high this morning at breakfast time. It compensates so well when we allow it to work the way that it's designed to work. All right. Number 4 is the satisfaction factor. And again, that's another one of those intuitive eating principles, eating for satisfaction. And so I kind of already mentioned that a little bit in my sort of my rambling talking there of those other principles. But again, unconditional permission to eat, honoring my hunger, feeling my fullness. So not only, hey, am I full, but am I satisfied? I left some of those meals full. I was full. But I still had ice cream afterward. I stopped and grabbed a little ice cream cone. But you know what? Because I gave myself unconditional permission to eat, knowing that I could go back and eat more ice cream, knowing that it didn't matter if I'd had ice cream 3 times that day, that it was perfectly fine for me to have ice cream again. I didn't feel like I needed to eat a lot of it either. I found myself satisfied with just a small little dish of ice cream or a small little ice cream cone. Everybody else is filling theirs up. If you're watching the video, you're seeing my hands, these tall ice cream things. And I didn't really feel a need to do that because, again, I could go back if I wanted more. And so that whole idea of satisfaction is so important to this process of eating, and of eating in a way that is going to serve our body well, both making sure we're getting enough, but also ensuring that we're not getting more than what our body needs as well. All right, now we are to the last point, which is coping with your emotions with kindness and in ways that don't always involve food. So, another really important principle of intuitive eating. A lot of my clients struggle with this. And so, we actually spend a lot of time going through this principle and working on this with people in different ways. We won't go into details on that here, but we'll probably talk about this more in the future. But in any case, you may be saying, well, why did you bring that up on the about your cruise ship, this cruise vacation or all-inclusive resorts? You can probably understand where unconditional permission to eat and honoring your hunger and fullness and satisfaction come in, but where's this emotion stuff come in? Well, my wife has a number of chronic medical conditions that impact our day-to-day life on a daily basis. There are very few days where it doesn't impact us to a pretty significant degree. So she has lupus, and she has something else called idiopathic intracranial hypertension, which is a really rare disease condition where you have too much spinal fluid pressure in your brain, and it can cause all kinds of nasty side effects like extreme pain, like over the top kinds of levels of pain, blackouts, blindness, hearing problems, confusion, all kinds of stuff like that. These are things we experience on a very, very regular basis. So not only that, and then she's got a couple of benign brain tumors and stuff. So these are things that we deal with on a daily basis. So going on the cruise, we had made some plans for a couple of excursions and outings. So I'd mentioned earlier in the show, Costa Maya. The first day when we landed in Costa Maya, we got off the ship to go into town and shop and just kind of see Costa Maya with the friends that we were traveling with. And my wife just couldn't do it. She realized shortly after we got off the boat, we needed to turn around. So she and I went back and drowned our sorrows in ice cream and food all day. Well, no, actually we didn't. What we did is we have various coping mechanisms for dealing with that. I let her know that, hey, this is not a big deal. We're still going to enjoy ourselves thoroughly. Let's go find some things to do. And so we went and we enjoyed the water slide and the water park area that is usually inundated with children and teenagers. And fortunately for us, there was nobody there. So it was really fantastic. We got to enjoy that time without all of those other people around. The ship was almost empty. And so the pool was empty. The food lines were empty and all of that stuff. So we got to really just kind of enjoy the boat. And we did not drown our sorrows and things in food. Sometimes that's okay to do that. Sometimes she and I will say, oh, this has been a horrible day. Do you want ice cream? And yeah, let's get some ice cream. So we'll get ice cream. But that's not normally how we handle things. We handle things by trying to work through those challenging and difficult times and difficult emotions. Now, the next day came up when we landed in Belize. We had a swim with sharks and rays plan. Sounds really fun. Didn't work out. She was not feeling good. So what did we do? We did not drown our sorrows in ice cream and stuff like that again either. We just went and enjoyed the ship. So as a side note, I have to say, if you are somebody or you have somebody in your life who struggles with a lot of chronic medical issues, a cruise ship is a really good, it really worked out well for us. This was our first cruise. We didn't know how well it would work. And it was such a good way of of enjoying a vacation with all of the difficulties that my wife deals with on a daily basis. So that was just my little plug for cruises. They're also pretty affordable relatively. All right. Now, you might be saying, okay, well, there you mentioned Cozumel. Maybe you got to enjoy that. Well, we had planned to see Mayan ruins in Cozumel, but lo and behold, my wife tripped over something in our room, which, to be fair, I also tripped over the same thing. I just didn't smash my arm into the floor like my wife did. So we went down to medical and they checked her out. She was okay. But because of her medical history, they called an ambulance from Cozumel, made us go to the hospital in Cozumel. Fortunately, we got back to the ship in time before they left. So we did not get stuck in Cozumel. But again, that changed our plans. And again, we could have drowned our sorrows in that or alcohol or a number of other unhealthy things like snapping at each other or blaming each other and those kinds of things. We didn't do that. We've learned to cope with these emotions, these challenges, these difficulties in life in ways that are healthy for our relationship and healthy for us as individuals. And so again, that was just a good reminder of the importance of having mechanisms in your life and ways of coping with things that don't involve food, because food is never going to fix an emotional challenge in your life. It might soothe it for a little bit, and that's okay. Sometimes we use it to help relax or to soothe, but for most cases, it's not going to solve the problem. And so, generally speaking, we need to find these ways of coping with our emotions with kindness and in ways that are actually going to resolve and help the situation, not make it worse. All right. So I hope that you found that helpful. Now, I want you to keep in mind that this does not just apply to an all-inclusive resort or a cruise. These principles that I talked about here today can really apply to any situation where it may not be unlimited food that's available, but maybe it's an uncomfortable amount of food that's available. Could be a family function, a retreat, a resort, some kind of work function, a conference, all kinds of different things come up in our lives where there is an uncomfortable level of food available. And if we're caught up in this dieting mentality, it can often make that a really anxiety-inducing sort of scenario to be in. So I hope that you find these principles helpful in navigating the next one that you're involved in. If you do, I'd love to hear from you. Feel free to shoot me a DM over on Instagram. You can drop me an email at jash@hopedrivesme.com. Leave a review or a comment on this particular episode of the podcast. I'd love to hear from you in any way like that. Also, if you have any questions, feel free to reach out, or if you would like to work with me, visit hopedrivesme.com, where you can make a connection and set up a completely free initial consultation. So if you have a trip coming up and you just want to take advantage of that free consultation to get some tips and ideas, feel free to connect with me there as well. So until next time, thanks.